So as the Las Vegas Raiders head into the 2025 NFL season, one of the things they're going to have to get right is to shore up some of the playmakers on that offensive side. To me, right now, when you look at the depth of the Las Vegas Raiders running backs and wide receivers, it looks really, really bad. I'm not going to lie to you guys. If this was the unit going into this season that the Raiders said we're going to go in with, I'd have no confidence that the Raiders are going to make the playoffs. And this is a season that the Raiders are pushing to make the playoffs. I know some people will disagree with this. Some people are going to wait and just kind of let it happen. We've had so much high hopes for the Raiders over the years. It never really pans out. So I understand a lot of people are going to take a step back and say, I want it to actually happen before I crown it. But, nonetheless, the Raiders have made every investment this offseason with the hopes that we're kind of going all in to try to win now, right? Pete Carroll said it. John Spytek said it. They went out and got a quarterback, which also speaks for itself. And even Maxx Crosby's contract's designed for, go all in 2-3 years. And, then it's a very tradable contract. And Maxx Crosby's been very open about that as well. I don't want to rebuild forever. I want to push to win now. But the thing is for the Raiders to push to win now, they have to shore up the running backs and wide receivers. And I kind of want to talk about it. Look at some of our running backs that we have. There's really nothing in this unit right here that excites me. Raheem Mostert is well past his prime, at least for the position that he plays. I know he had success 2 years ago, but he really didn't have success last year, and he was inarguably the best run scheme in the NFL, right? And even before that with Kyle Shanahan, that's arguably one of the best run schemes in the NFL. He's coming to the Raiders now, which we don't really know if it's going to be a running back friendly offense, right? We would think it is based off of Chip Kelly and what he's done in the past, but we don't really know if Raheem Mostert at the age that he's at, if he'll be able to have success as we kind of go forward. And what's crazy is he's our best running back on this roster. Sincere McCormick, I have no hope that he's going to be a good running back long term. Zamir White's a terrible running back. I don't even know why he's on the roster at this point. Dylan Labe is the one guy that we don't really know, right? Maybe he develops in his second year and ends up being actually good. But even then, I'm just not sold, and I think one of the things the Raiders have to do in this class is they got to get a running back. They got to get a difference maker. But the thing with the Raiders is they don't need just a running back. They need a wide receiver as well. When you look at the wide receivers we have, there's really not much that excites me here. Realistically, right? If you're being 100% honest, there is not really anything that's kind of proven either, right? Jacoby Myers is the only guy that I would say is a legit wide receiver for the Raiders. But even then, if you're being 100% honest, Jacoby Myers is not a guy that's going to take a 15-yard pass to the house. He just doesn't do that. That's not part of his game. Jacoby Myers is a very solid wide receiver in terms of being able to make those tough catches. He's very solid in his route running, and he's not an elite route runner, but just everything he does is just really, really good, right? He doesn't have elite speed. He doesn't run elite routes. He doesn't have an elite frame or an elite, jump catch ability, but everything he does have is just, good. It's just solid. It's productive. It's good, right? And I think Jacoby Myers is a very, very good wide receiver, but he isn't a difference maker, and the Raiders don't have any difference makers right now from the running backs or the wide receivers. Now, obviously, we have Brock Bowers. And I think Brock Bowers is definitely a difference maker. Michael Mayer, there's potential, but he's really never proven himself. Same with Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker's the other guy where he has potential, but he's never really proven himself. And until Trey Tucker proves himself to be the guy we think he can be, there's just not a whole lot to be excited about. So the Raiders really have to focus as they head over the next, 6 to 12 weeks before training camp officially begins. As they kind of go into this next process in the draft, post-draft, and even maybe a week or so before the draft, right? Maybe you sign a key free agent, which allows you to go into the draft with maybe a little bit more flexibility, right? Bringing Raheem Mostert kind of give that flexibility to the Raiders. We got to figure these positions out. And I want to just kind of go over some of what I think the Raiders should realistically do. So, obviously, if the Raiders want to go with the wide receiver, there's probably a couple of options with the 6th overall pick that you could potentially make. The one thing I will say with drafting a wide receiver with the 6th overall pick is, if it's not the right wide receiver, he's not going to be worth the 6th overall pick. A couple years back, we had multiple wide receivers that kind of went back to back to back. Quentin Johnston was one of them. I think with the Chargers. Jackson Smith-Njigba with the Seahawks. I believe the Ravens drafted a guy, and I forget who the 4th guy was. But we had 4 wide receivers that kind of went back to back to back. And, that was a draft where there was no Jamar Chase. There was no Malik Neighbors. There was no Travis Hunter, right? That was that draft where wide receivers went a little late. And the thing is with wide receivers, you're either going to be elite or you're going to have to develop into being really, 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 really good, right? And in this class, I think Travis Hunter might be the only elite wide receiver right now, right? And what that means for the Raiders is if you say, hey, we're going to take Tetro McMillan with the 6th overall pick, you might be reaching a little bit. If you say we're going to take Kyle Williams with the 6th overall pick, we don't really know if he's worth that pick. Yes, the tape is really, really good with Kyle Williams. The tape is really, really good with Matthew Golden, but we don't know if these guys are worth that pick. And if you say, hey, instead of taking a wide receiver with the 6th overall pick, we'll come back and take one in the 2nd or 3rd round, chances are that guy's not going to be a starting caliber wide receiver, especially day one. And I think for the Raiders, you kind of need that right away, right? Like the clock has started this season. This is not a season we can kind of waste, right? And I hope people kind of understand what I'm saying with that. The Raiders' decisions that they've made is not, building for 2 or 3 years down the line. They're going all in to win this year. Now, one of the things you can do if you're the Raiders is you can say, let's take a running back, potentially with the 6th overall pick, right? Let's say it's Ashton Jeanty. And then you could hope that one of these wide receivers ends up falling. Emeka Egbuka, Luther Burden are 2 guys that some people really, really like. Jalen Noel is another guy who's a true X wide receiver, in my opinion. Right? He's long, he's large, he's a really, really good wide receiver. Even Kyle Williams, right? I know Kyle Williams is way down here. This is way wrong, obviously, right? We know there's guys like even Ty Felton that'll go higher. Maybe Kyle Williams is available in the 2nd round. To me, the Raiders could definitely go down this path where they say, let's go with running back first, wide receiver second. Alternatively, you could potentially take Tetro McMillan or Kyle Williams if they're those type of players with the 6th overall pick. You could take Luther Burden potentially. Some people don't know this, but coming into this season, Luther Burden was ranked the number 1 player by NFL scouts, right? NFL scouts, there's a scouting list out there. NGS is one of them. Bledsoe's another. Luther Burden was considered the number 1 player coming into this class, right? Now, obviously, Luther Burden, he had a good year, but not a great year. Stock's falling a little bit, but I think he still wants some point in the 1st round. I don't think he gets outside like the top 30 to 35 picks. But nonetheless, the Raiders have to figure out how they're going to kind of approach. Now, I would love for the Raiders to be able to get Travis Hunter somehow, right? I think, there is a chance. It's not a high chance, but there's a chance we get 2 quarterbacks to go. There's a chance that some team says, hey, Will Johnson, or even Barron out of Texas, the other corner. Maybe some team says we want a corner and we think one of those guys is a difference maker. There could be a team that really, really wants Ashton Jeanty, and there's a team that could really, really want a tackle. In that instance, if that happens, right, where you get 5 of those 6 guys I just mentioned, if you get 5 of those guys to basically go for the Raiders pick, there's a chance Travis Hunter could still be there. Right? Of course, Abdul Carter would end up going top 5 as well. To me, there's a chance Travis Hunter ends up being available. And I think Travis Hunter is the one wide receiver that is a difference maker with the 6th overall pick that I would definitely take. And in that instance, you can come back in the 2nd round, and there's just so many running backs to pick from. And what's crazy is, the list of where guys are ranked right now is not what's going to end up happening. I do think Ashton Jeanty goes in the top 10. I think Amarian Hampton also goes in the top, I'd say probably 15 to 20 picks. And then from there, we don't really know which running backs can go next. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Caleb Johnson's the 25th overall pick, or Travion Henderson's the 29th overall pick. I wouldn't be surprised if RJ Harvey at a UCF went in the 1st round. I would not be surprised. This guy reminds me so much of Josh Jacobs, and we saw Josh Jacobs go in the 1st round, 5-6 years back. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being a 1st round pick. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a top 45 pick, right? There's just a lot of really good running backs in this class. Dylan Sampson, super explosive. Scadab, everybody knows, right? Coming out of the Sacramento area, the guy's just a monster running back, breaks a ton of tackles. And that doesn't include some of these underrated guys, right? Brashard Smith, right? 1 year as a running back. He was a wide receiver before that. Had like 20 combined catches over like 3 or 4 years. Came to SMU, became a running back. He had like 1,300 yards or something crazy. Or maybe he had a really, really high amount of yards per attempt. We had Raheem Sanders, who was at Arkansas for years, dominated. Had an injury, ended up transferring, came to South Carolina. Was still kind of hurt this year, in my opinion. Was not 100% healthy. And the guy's really, really, really talented as well. In a healthy year, he could have been a top, 96 pick, in my opinion. Jacovius Marks, incredible quickness, sideline to sideline ability. And the list just goes on. And it's just crazy how many good running backs there are. Mario Anderson, very, very solid. I saw him at the Hula Bowl firsthand. Corey Krosky Merritt, saw him at the Hula Bowl. He then went to the Shrine Bowl. And he got the MVP of the East-West Shrine, right? So he's a very talented running back as well. He ended up not even playing this past season, right? He ended up being ineligible to play, which is, some weird situation that kind of happened. The list goes on and on. You can just go down this list, and there's a lot of good running backs. To me, I think the Raiders would be smart to draft 2 running backs in this class, because I can make the argument that, if the Raiders do go with the running back in the second round, and you come back with another running back in round 4 or 5, I could make the argument both of those running backs would be better than every other running back we already have on the roster, right? So, again, I think for the Raiders, you got to figure out the running back and wide receiver position. The depth looks really bad right now if you're the Raiders. And just to kind of go back to the depth a little bit, I don't have the faith that Vermont Keaton's going to end up being a really good player. Now, don't get it wrong. He was pretty solid last preseason, if you guys remember. But generally speaking, if you're a wide receiver that's a good wide receiver and you have the potential to be an NFL caliber player, you make plays your very first year, right? The Panthers had a UDFA guy, I believe at a Holy Cross, I forget his name. But the guy had multiple games where he had like 50, 60, 70 yards. He looked really, really good, right? And sometimes you can tell with young guys in their first years if they're ever going to be good or not. And I just don't have confidence. We have a bunch of practice squad guys. Tyreek McAllister has shown some flashes. I think he's the guy. But, Trey Tucker, Tyreek McAllister, are they true wide receivers or are they gadget guys, right? So to me, the Raiders have to figure it out. But here's the good thing with this draft that's kind of coming up. If you do hit, let's say, on Travis Hunter as the 6th overall pick, and maybe if it's not Travis Hunter, maybe it's Ashton Jeanty with the 6th overall pick, you get a guy that's a legit difference maker. That player is arguably your best offensive player. Right, and think about that. We have Brock Bowers, who's arguably the best tight end. We have Paris Johnson, who's arguably one of the best centers. You have 2 guys already on this offense, and adding either of Ashton Jeanty or Travis Hunter now means you have arguably the best running back, arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL, right? Guys that will be top 5 at their positions. And here's the thing. If you do hit on one of those guys at pick 6, in the second round, there's a chance you get another wide receiver that falls, right? Kyle Williams, Mecca Buka, Luther Burden. There's other guys as well that will be good wide receivers that could technically be there in the second round. Now, generally, second round wide receivers do take a little bit of time to develop. This draft class is unique where there are so many starting caliber players. Like, I would make the argument every guy picked in the top 3 rounds should probably be a starter within the first 2 or 3 years, right? You got like 10 or probably more than that, but like 10 or 12 defensive tackles or starting caliber guys. There's probably 15 running backs that could be starting caliber running backs. There's probably another 15 defensive ends that are starting caliber guys. And to be honest, we might see like 8 defensive ends drafted in the first round. We might see, 8 running backs or wide receivers taken into like the top 45. Like, this class is going to be very, very interesting. I think it's going to be kind of unique in that instance that there's a lot of starting caliber players. So we'll see what ends up happening. Hopefully the Raiders are kind of going to be able to figure it out. I do have 2 other things that I want to just kind of talk about really quickly. It is not anything crazy, but the Raiders did retain 5 exclusive free agents, and they basically have re-signed these guys, and these guys are now officially back with the team. This isn't anything crazy, right? It's not like it's Maxx Crosby, but there are 5 guys. I think some of these guys may have already been reported, but the Raiders choose to keep all 5 of these guys, right? So they chose to keep Matthew Butler, Muwaga, linebacker Jordan Meredith, Charles Snowden, Sam Webb. So the Raiders decided that we want to keep these 5 guys, right? Essentially, you could have let all 5 of these guys go. And like, we already knew with Jordan Meredith, right? That was a pretty big report that came out a couple weeks back. But a guy like Matthew Butler, right? Matthew Butler to me is a guy that had a ton of upside coming out of college. He had a really, really good 5th year at Tennessee. I think the first 4 years he was kind of average, but that 5th year, something happened and he just started to look a lot better, right? He started flashing a little bit. And he's shown us potential, but he's never been able to put it together, right? And I don't know what it was with Matthew Butler where he was never able to put it together. But remember, Matthew Butler was a 5th round pick, and we took a 4th round defensive tackle right before him in Neil Farrell. And Matthew Butler's been here now for like 4th year, I think is this year. The guy's been around for a number of years. Neil Farrell was traded a while back, right? Which also just kind of tells you that there is some potential with Matthew Butler. There's some upside where the Raiders want to actually keep this guy around. And again, I hope it clicks this year. I don't think Matthew Butler's ever showed Malcolm Koonce type of upside, right? Like with Malcolm Koonce, that was so easy to predict. Like, this guy's going to be a superstar caliber player. You saw that pretty much right away in his first year. Preseason, honestly, that he looked really, really good. Matthew Butler hasn't flashed that, but he has looked good, right? Like there's upside, long-term upside. Maybe in year 8, he ends up becoming a really good pass rusher, right? I think there's that type of upside with him. So he's a guy I'm going to really keep an eye on this training camp, this offseason, the preseason especially, is going to be huge for Butler. We have a couple of different D tackles that have been competing for playing time. Another guy I'm going to keep an eye on is going to be Sam Webb. Sam Webb's an interesting guy, right? He was with the Raiders. I think he was initially with the Vikings. He came over the Raiders. I don't think he ever left the Raiders. Don't quote me on that. But there's a chance he might have left us for a short period, and then we kind of brought him back. Don't quote me on that. I might be confusing him with another corner. But Sam Webb, he has been with the Raiders for a couple of years. Patrick Graham has been here for 3 years now. Sam Webb's been here for every single one of those years. And this guy's always shown potential. He's always shown upside. And the thing is Sam Webb's still technically a young player. Like, there's a chance this is the year that it kind of clicks for him. And remember, Sam Webb is 6'2", 200 pounds. That's a good scheme fit for Pete Carroll. Eric Stokes, 6'1.5", right? We wanted to bring him in for Pete Carroll. Jack Jones didn't fit, right? We let him go real quick. Sam Webb's a good scheme fit. So he's another guy I'm going to definitely be keeping an eye on as we kind of get into this process coming up. I think there's upside with him. We'll see what he can kind of develop into. And then I want to wrap this video up. There's one other report that kind of came out. The Bears apparently love running back Ashton Jeanty amid the Raiders buzz. And to me, this is kind of an interesting report that's coming out. So what's interesting about this to me is the fact that Matt Miller of ESPN's putting it out there that the Bears apparently love Ashton Jeanty according to scouts around the league who observed the team's activity this offseason. So the Boise State running back could be the pick at number 10 if he's still around. Now, some people are going to say, how does this impact the Raiders? I'm gonna try to connecting two different dots. First and foremost, I want to just kind of make this known. Being at the Hula Bowl this past year in January, one of the things I had realized real quick was, every scout house there, and there were hundreds of scouts there, right? Every scout had their team uniforms on, right? Obviously. And one of the things I noticed is certain guys, certain teams went up to certain guys. Let's say it was a left tackle, then they went up and they then looked at another left tackle. And then they went and talked to another left tackle. And every day it'd be like the same 2 or 3 guys they'd come back and talk to. Hearing some of the conversations, things like, hey, we saw this play yesterday on tape, or this kind of happened. What are your thoughts? Someone busts out an iPad and will kind of start going over certain things. My point in saying that is sometimes you start to recognize patterns with scouts, right? Hey, go talk to this player. He's a target. And the thing is these scouts aren't talking to every, 200 player that's at those games, right? They're talking specifically to certain players. And here's where the report that the Bears with Ashton Jeanty kind of comes into play. If Matt Miller's noticed that the Bears have kind of been all over Ashton Jeanty, if the Bears have scheduled the visits and the Bears have been interested, and the Bears just hire an offensive coordinator who in the past to bring in a running back in Jamar Gibbs, right? Jamar Gibbs came over to the Lions, and apparently the report was Ben Johnson was very, very, very interested in him. If Ben Johnson has already shown us that he will draft the running back in the top 15 once, why would he not do it again? And truth be told, the Bears don't have a lot of issues right now that need to be fixed. They have a franchise right tackle. They got 2 veteran guards. They have a left tackle that's entering year 4 who, they don't really know if he's going to be their long-term guy if they traded for a center. They have their quarterback. They have a couple of really good wide receivers. On the defensive side, they have guys that they can go into this next season. In fact, I think they're a top 10 defense last year. They don't have a whole lot that they need, so they can add a running back with the 10th overall pick, and that makes them so much better. And Ben Johnson has done this in the past, where he's added a running back. Here's another thing to note. If you guys remember, the Raiders were the only team where their general manager, John Spytek, showed up to Boise State. All right, specifically their pro day. And John Spytek showed up to the Ashton Jeanty pro day, right? And he, visited with him privately, had dinner with them. They even brought him in, I believe, yesterday. The Raiders might actually be looking to get a team to jump up. And I think with this report that the Bears apparently love Ashton Jeanty, this could give the Raiders a legit way to trade back, right? You go from 6 back to 10. There's still a lot of really good weapons, right? There's still going to be a really good wide receiver on the board with pick 10. It might be Tetra McMillan. It might be Kyle Williams. It might be, Luther Burden or one of these other guys. But if your guy at pick 6 is not available it makes sense to trade back, right? And potentially get an additional second or third round pick, right? If you're the Bears, would you give up, your first and third round pick to make sure you 100% get Ashton Jeanty? Or are you going to say, hey, maybe the Saints take Ashton Jeanty, maybe the Raiders take him with pick 6, right? So to me, it's just an interesting report that's coming out that the Bears are 100% interested in this guy. And it makes sense, right, from a team perspective, from a coach perspective. And again, I think John Spytek may actually be looking to trade out of pick 6. And I said this yesterday, but in order to move back, you got to have a team willing to move up, right? And we know with the Cleveland Farrell situation that had happened years ago, Mike Mayock, John Gruden tried moving back, and they're on the clock. They weren't able to move back. Teams weren't willing to move up. And then they had to kind of just stick and pick, and they took Cleveland Farrell. They took need over best player available, and we saw how that kind of worked out, right? So it will be interesting to see what the Raiders end up doing. I do think it would be smart for the Raiders to take a guy with the 6th overall pick, especially if it's a difference maker, like Travis Hunter, for example, or Abdul Carter. But if it's a running back like Ashton Jeanty, I'd be okay with trading back. I know Ashton Jeanty's a difference maker, but there's just so many good running backs out there where you can get extra, get that extra pick, trade back. Maybe it's not Ashton Jeanty you get, but now maybe it's a different, tackle or running back or wide receiver that you like enough that you get that extra 3rd round pick, because that 3rd round pick could be a starting caliber defensive tackle in this class or a starting caliber guard in this class, right? So let me know what you guys think, man. What do you guys think is going to end up happening with the Raiders? We'll see what ends up happening, man. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.